All right, so get this. We're diving deep today into the things that every business needs to survive. And it's not just about cash flow. You know, like how do some companies just seem to get it right? We're going beyond the surface here to figure out those core resources that make or break success.
And that's true even for companies that haven't even been invented yet.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
It's like, what are those fundamental building blocks that'll be just as relevant in the future?
It's wild how, even with totally groundbreaking ideas, you just can't escape the fundamentals.
You're absolutely right.
Whether you're a tech giant or a one-person shop, it all goes back to these three things: natural resources, labor, and capital.
Those are the big three.
If you can understand those, it's like having a blueprint for success.
Okay, so let's break it down. Starting with natural resources. Now, this has got to be more than just, being eco-friendly, right?
Right.
What are we really talking about here?
Well, think about it this way. If you were building your dream business,
Okay.
what are those raw essential ingredients that you absolutely could not do without?
The things you just can't operate without.
Yeah. So for a high-end clothing brand that might be organic cotton, sustainable dyes, things that match their brand image and attract customers who care about the environment.
Makes sense.
But for a tech startup, it might be about minimizing their data center's energy consumption, not just for cost savings, but to attract talent who prioritize sustainability.
Interesting. So it's not just about, doing good.
Right.
It's a strategic move.
Exactly. It affects the bottom line.
Okay, I like that. Have you ever seen a business where their use of natural resources really caught your eye?
Right.
Maybe even influenced your decision to support them?
Totally. I mean, there's a local brewery here that built their whole brand around using local ingredients and renewable energy.
That's nice.
And it's not just marketing. I mean,
No.
you can taste the difference in the beer.
You can tell they're committed to that.
Yeah, their commitment to sustainability is obvious in everything they do. And that kind of authenticity really resonates with customers.
Yeah, it's like they're weaving their values right into the product. But it's got to be more than just the raw materials, right?
Of course.
What about the actual location of a business? Does that count as a natural resource consideration too?
Definitely. I mean, think about Patagonia. Their headquarters are nestled in Ventura, California, surrounded by mountains and the ocean.
Yeah, their headquarters are gorgeous.
It's not just pretty, though. It
Yeah.
actually reinforces their brand identity and attracts employees who share their passion for the outdoors.
Yeah, well. So it's like their headquarters are a living, breathing embodiment of their brand.
I think so, yeah.
I can see how that would be a huge draw for both customers and employees.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got the earthly elements covered.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about the human side of the equation now. Labor resources. And I'm guessing this is about a lot more than just paychecks, right?
It is. It's about realizing that employees are more than just cogs in a machine,
For sure.
Happy, engaged employees are more productive, more creative, more likely to stay with a company.
They're invested.
Yeah, it's about creating a work environment where people feel valued, challenged, and empowered to do their best.
I've worked in places where you could just feel the difference when a company really invested in its people. It was obvious.
Right.
But how does a business even know what skills to prioritize? I mean, is it all about technical expertise or is there more to it?
Well, technical skills are definitely important, but don't underestimate those soft skills like communication, problem solving, adaptability.
Right.
Companies like Google are known for hiring people with super diverse backgrounds and skill sets because a well-rounded team is more innovative and resilient.
They're looking for the whole package.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They also invest a lot in employee development, offering opportunities for continuous learning and growth.
So it's not just about finding the right people. It's about making sure they can keep growing.
It's both.
Okay, that makes sense.
Mm.
What about situations, though, where you need, specialized expertise, but maybe just for a short period of time?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Does that still fall under this labor resource umbrella?
Absolutely. I mean, think about the film industry. They bring in all these experts like cinematographers, costume designers, editors, people whose skills are essential for a specific project.
Right.
So it's a perfect example of how labor resources can be flexible and tailored to a business's needs.
Okay, so it's like assembling a dream team, but you get to do it for each project.
Exactly.
So we've covered natural resources.
Mhm.
We've talked about the human element. And now for the tools of the trade capital resources, I'm assuming we're not talking about venture capital funding here.
Not this time.
So what are we talking about then?
We're talking about the physical assets, the machinery, the equipment, the technology that allows a business to operate efficiently and actually produce their goods or services.
Okay, so this is the infrastructure that supports everything else.
Yeah, think of it like the ovens in a bakery or the servers powering a tech company's platform.
It seems like having the right capital resources could be a massive advantage.
Oh, absolutely. Look at Tesla. They invested heavily in their gigafactories, which are filled with state-of-the-art robotics and automation.
That's next level.
It allows them to produce electric vehicles on a massive scale with incredible precision and efficiency, which really sets them apart in the automotive industry.
It's like they're building the future.
Right.
But it makes me wonder, how does a business even choose the right capital resources? Because there's got to be more to it than just buying the newest, shiniest gadget.
There is. It's about finding that sweet spot between what a business needs to actually produce its products or services efficiently and the cost of acquiring and maintaining those resources.
So it's a balancing act.
Yeah. Sometimes investing in the latest and greatest technology can give a company a serious competitive advantage.
Right.
But other times, it might make more sense to stick with equipment that's tried and true, reliable, and cost-effective.
Okay. So you got to weigh the pros and cons.
Always.
Have you ever been just like completely blown away by the scale or the complexity of the capital resources a business uses?
Oh, yeah, all the time. I recently toured a manufacturing facility that used 3D printing to create custom prosthetics.
Oh.
The precision and speed with which they could produce those devices was just incredible. It was a powerful reminder of how technology can be used to improve people's lives.
That's amazing. So we've got the raw materials. We've got the human element. We've got the tools. But how do these all work together? It can't just be like a random mix, right?
Definitely not. It's more like an ecosystem. Each resource category depends on the others to function properly.
So they're all connected.
Yeah, think of it this way. A construction company needs sustainable timber.
Okay.
They need skilled carpenters, and they need powerful cranes.
Got it.
Having one without the others just throws the whole system off balance.
So it's all about synergy.
Exactly.
But doesn't the way these resources are managed change depending on the type of business? Like you wouldn't expect a small bakery to have the same needs as a global tech company, right?
Oh, that's a great point.
Yeah.
You're right. A bakery might focus on sourcing like high-quality local ingredients
Yeah.
and investing in those really skilled bakers to make incredible artisanal bread.
It's all about the craft.
Yeah, and their capital resources might be more like specialized ovens and mixers.
Right.
Whereas a tech company is going to prioritize attracting those top engineers
Oh, for sure.
and investing in cutting-edge servers and software development tools to stay competitive.
It's like they're playing different games with different rule books.
Exactly.
But even within the same industry, you must see variations in how companies approach this whole resource management thing, right?
Oh, all the time. Take the fashion industry, for example.
Okay.
A fast fashion retailer like Zara is going to prioritize speed and efficiency using global supply chains and just-in-time manufacturing to get those trendy clothes onto the shelves really quickly.
Got to stay on top of the trends.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But a luxury brand like Hermes is all about craftsmanship and exclusivity.
Very different.
Right. They use rare materials and highly skilled artisans to create those timeless pieces.
It's fascinating how their resource strategies really reflect their brand identities.
It is.
It makes me wonder, though, with all this rapid technological advancement, how is that shaking things up?
Oh, for sure.
Are automation and AI becoming the ultimate capital resources?
It's definitely changing the game. Companies are using AI to optimize their supply chains, personalize customer experiences, automate tasks that used to be done by humans.
Like what kinds of tasks?
Well, look at Amazon. Their use of robotics in those fulfillment centers allows them to process and ship orders with crazy speed and efficiency.
It's like the robots are becoming the new workforce.
In a way, but it's not really about replacing human workers. It's more about shifting the skills that are in demand.
What do you mean?
So as automation takes over those repetitive or manual tasks, the need for workers with critical thinking, problem-solving, creativity skills increases.
Interesting. So those skills are more important than ever.
Absolutely. We're seeing a huge rise in demand for data analysts, software developers, user experience designers, people who can work with the technology.
So it's not human versus machine. It's about figuring out how they can work together more effectively. You know, it's making me think about those incredible documentaries that show how companies build these super complex products.
I love those.
It's like watching this symphony of resources in action.
It is. It's amazing. And as technology continues to evolve, I think we can expect even more innovative ways to combine and leverage these resources.
Absolutely.
Think about the rise of 3D printing.
Oh, yeah.
It allows companies to create custom products on demand, which reduces waste and shortens lead times. It's really blurring the lines between natural resources, capital resources, even labor in some ways.
It's like we're entering this whole new era of resource management.
I think so.
But speaking of new eras, how is globalization impacting the way businesses think about resources?
Well, globalization has created amazing opportunities for businesses to access new markets, new talent, new resources.
Yeah, but it's not without its challenges, right?
Definitely. Companies operating on a global scale have to navigate complex supply chains, cultural differences, and varying regulatory environments.
It's a lot to juggle.
It is. Are there any companies that are doing a particularly good job of managing resources in this globalized world?
Are there any that stand out to you?
I think Unilever is a great example. They have a massive global footprint.
They're everywhere.
I know, right?
Right.
And they've made a real commitment to sustainable sourcing, reducing their environmental impact, and promoting diversity and inclusion throughout their supply chain.
So they're not just focused on global expansion, they're incorporating ethical and sustainable practices into their global strategy.
Absolutely.
That makes me think about how important it is for businesses to adapt and evolve their resource strategies over time.
Yeah.
It's not a one and done kind of thing, right?
No, it's a constant process. The business landscape is always changing, so companies need to be agile and adaptable in their approach to resource management. What works today might not work tomorrow.
It's all about staying ahead of the curve.
Right.
But up until this point, we've mainly been focusing on those tangible resources, the things you can see and touch.
Yeah.
But what about the intangible resources that are becoming increasingly valuable in today's business world?
That's a great point. Intangible resources, things like brand reputation, intellectual property, and company culture. They can be just as valuable, if not more so, than those tangible assets.
Okay, so these are the things you can't necessarily hold in your hand, but they still have a huge impact on a company's success.
For sure.
Can you give us some examples of how companies are leveraging these intangible resources to get ahead?
Think about Disney. Their brand is built on decades of storytelling, iconic characters, and that reputation for creating these magical experiences.
It's like an American institution.
It is, and that intangible brand equity is incredibly valuable. It allows them to charge premium prices, attract top talent, and expand into new markets easily.
Wow, so their brand is like a shortcut to success.
Kind of. It takes a lot of work to build that kind of reputation, though.
I bet. So how do you actually build a strong intangible asset like that? It's not like you can just buy it off the shelf, right?
Not at all.
Yeah.
It takes time, consistency, and a really deep understanding of your target audience.
You've got to know your audience.
Yes, companies like Apple have built those cult-like followings by consistently delivering high-quality products,
Right.
creating really memorable customer experiences, and cultivating that sense of community among their users.
Oh, yeah, you can definitely see
They're
that.
not just selling products, they're selling a lifestyle, an aspiration.
Interesting. Okay, what about intellectual property? How does that fit into the whole intangible resource equation?
Well, intellectual property, things like patents, trademarks, copyrights, they can be a major source of competitive advantage.
I can see how.
Think about pharmaceutical companies. They invest so much in research and development to create new drugs.
Billions of dollars.
Exactly. And those patents protect their innovations and allow them to recoup their investments and continue to innovate.
So their intellectual property is like a gold mine.
In a way.
Hmm.
But protecting those intangible assets is tough, especially in today's digital world.
Yeah, how do you protect those things?
Well, cybersecurity is crucial for companies that rely heavily on intellectual property.
Right.
And with the rise of social media, companies have to be super vigilant about protecting their brand reputation online. It's a whole new battlefield for resource management.
So we've got tangible resources,
Yeah.
intangible resources, global complexities. It's making me think about how all these pieces fit into this bigger picture of ethical and sustainable business practices.
You're right. That's a really important point. As companies become more aware of their impact on the environment and on society, they're starting to integrate ethical considerations into their resource management strategies.
So it's not just what resources you use, but how you use them.
Exactly.
Are there any companies that are really leading the charge in this area?
I think Patagonia is a great example. They've been a pioneer in sustainable business practices for decades.
Oh, for sure.
They use recycled materials, support fair labor practices, and advocate for environmental protection. They've shown that you can be both profitable and responsible.
It's like they're proof that doing good is good for business.
Yeah.
I imagine it takes more than just good intentions, though, to actually make those kinds of changes.
It does. It requires a fundamental shift in mindset. From a focus on short-term profits to a long-term vision of sustainability and social responsibility.
It's about playing the long game.
Right. Companies need to be willing to invest in new technologies,
Yeah.
change their supply chains, even rethink their entire business models.
It's a total transformation.
It can be.
How do companies even begin to make those kinds of changes, though? It just seems so overwhelming.
Well, it all starts with a commitment from leadership and a willingness to embrace innovation and collaboration. Companies can look to industry best practices, partner with nonprofits, and even engage with their customers to come up with more sustainable and ethical solutions.
It's like a collective effort to create a better future for business and for the planet.
Exactly.
But beyond these big systemic changes, what can individuals do to contribute to a more ethical and sustainable business world?
As consumers, we have so much power. We can choose to support companies that align with our values, reduce our own consumption, and advocate for policies that promote sustainability and social responsibility.
So it's about voting with our wallets and our voices.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a powerful reminder that we all have a role to play in creating a more ethical and sustainable future.
It's like a ripple effect.
Mhm.
Speaking of impact, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this growing trend of impact investing. It seems like investors are becoming more interested in supporting businesses that are trying to make a positive difference in the world.
Yeah, it's an exciting development. Impact investing is all about aligning your financial goals with your values,
Yeah.
Investors are realizing that they can actually generate both financial returns and positive social or environmental impact.
So it's not just about making money, it's about making a difference.
Exactly.
But how do impact investors even identify companies that are truly committed to sustainability and social responsibility? I mean, is there a way to tell?
Well, there's a whole growing ecosystem of organizations and resources that are helping investors evaluate the impact of different companies and investment opportunities.
Wow, so there are people who specialize in this.
Yeah, they look at factors like a company's environmental footprint, their social impact, governance practices, transparency.
So it's about doing your research and really making sure that your investments are making a positive difference.
It is.
It's amazing to see how the world of business is evolving to embrace these ideas of sustainability, ethics, social responsibility. I think that's really cool.
Me too. It's definitely a step in the right direction.
It feels like we're at this turning point where businesses are realizing they can be a force for good in the world, and investors are starting to take notice.
I agree. It's a really exciting time to be talking about all this.
So beyond impact investing, are there other ways businesses are working together to tackle these big challenges?
Definitely. There's a growing trend towards businesses collaborating to create more sustainable and ethical practices. You're seeing all these industry-wide initiatives to reduce waste, improve working conditions, and promote transparency in supply chains.
So they're realizing that they can achieve more together than they can alone. Are there any examples of these types of collaborations that really stand out to you?
Well, the Sustainable Apparel Coalition is a great example. It brings together all these major fashion brands, retailers, manufacturers to try to reduce the environmental and social impact of the fashion industry. They've developed tools and resources to measure and improve sustainability performance across the entire supply chain.
So it's about creating a shared vision and then working together to make it a reality.
Right.
It's inspiring to see businesses coming together like this.
It is.
But how do these collaborative efforts actually translate into real-world change? I mean, are we seeing actual progress?
Yeah, we are. We're seeing companies make some pretty significant strides in reducing their carbon emissions,
Okay.
adopting renewable energy sources, and implementing circular economy principles. There's still a long way to go, but the momentum is definitely building.
It's good to hear.
Yeah.
It's like we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
But with all these complexities, do you ever feel overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the challenges we're facing?
I mean, sometimes it can feel a little daunting, but I find it helpful to focus on those positive changes that are already happening.
Yeah.
There's a growing awareness of these issues,
Right.
and more businesses are stepping up to take responsibility. That gives me a lot of hope for the future.
I love that. It's a good reminder that even small actions can make a big difference.
Mm.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
We've explored the essential business resources, how technology and globalization are changing things, the power of those intangible assets, the importance of ethics, and the rise of collaborative solutions.
It's been a great conversation.
It has.
Yeah.
Do you have any final words of wisdom for our listeners as they navigate this complex world of business?
I think the biggest takeaway is that resource management is an ongoing journey, not a destination.
You're always learning.
Exactly. It's
All
about
right.
constantly learning, adapting, and finding those innovative ways to create value while minimizing your impact on the planet and society.
So it's about finding that sweet spot between profit, people, and the planet.
I think so.
And it sounds like we have a lot of reasons to be optimistic about the future.
I agree. We do.
I love that. So to all our listeners out there, whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur, a new startup founder, or simply someone who cares about creating a more sustainable and ethical world, just remember, every choice you make has an impact. Choose wisely, collaborate boldly, and never stop innovating. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure. Yeah, it's like an ecosystem, really. Each resource category relies on the others to function well. Think about it this way, like a construction company. They need sustainable timber, for sure.
Of course.
They need skilled carpenters to do the work.
Right.
And they need those powerful cranes to move everything.
They couldn't do it without all three.
Exactly. If you're missing one of those, it throws off the balance of the whole system.
Okay, so it's all about synergy. Got it.
Yeah.
But doesn't the way these resources are managed kind of change depending on the type of business you're talking about?
For sure.
Like, I mean, you wouldn't expect a small bakery to have the same needs as, say, like a global tech company, would you?
No, not at all. I mean, a bakery might focus on sourcing high-quality local ingredients and investing in really skilled bakers to create that amazing artisanal bread. Their capital resources might be more about those specialized ovens and mixers that they need.
Whereas a tech company is going to be all about attracting that top engineering talent and investing in cutting-edge servers and software development tools just to stay ahead of the curve.
Exactly. It's really different depending on what the company does.
So it's like they're playing different games with completely different rule books.
It kind of is like that.
But even within the same industry, though, you must see variations in how companies decide to approach this whole resource management thing, don't you?
Yeah, all the time. Take the fashion industry, for example.
Oh, I'm listening.
A fast fashion retailer like Zara, they're all about speed and efficiency.
They can get those clothes out there fast.
Exactly. So they use global supply chains and that just-in-time manufacturing model to get those trendy clothes onto the shelves as quickly as possible.
But then you've got like a luxury brand like Hermes on the other end of the spectrum.
Completely different approach, right? They use those rare materials and those highly skilled artisans to create pieces that are meant to last.
And people pay a premium for that.
They do. It's interesting, though, how their resource strategies really reflect their brand identities.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it like that. But it makes total sense. With all this rapid technological advancement that's happening, though, I'm curious, how is that shaking things up?
Oh, it's changing everything.
I bet. Are things like automation and AI becoming like the ultimate capital resources?
You're definitely changing the game. Companies are using AI to optimize their supply chains, personalize customer experiences, and even automate tasks that humans used to do.
Okay, give me an example of that.
Well, like, look at Amazon. Their use of robotics in their fulfillment centers. It's amazing. They can process and ship orders so fast and so efficiently.
It's mind-blowing how they do that.
Yeah.
So like those robots are becoming the new workforce then.
It seems that way, but I don't think it's actually about replacing human workers completely. It's more about a shift in the skills that are most in demand.
Okay, explain that to me.
So as automation takes over those jobs that are very repetitive or manual, the ones that don't require a lot of thinking,
Right.
well, the need for workers who have those critical thinking, problem-solving, and creativity skills actually increases.
So skills like that are more important than ever now.
I think so. We're
Same.
seeing a huge rise in demand for data analysts, software developers, user experience designers, people who can work with technology.
Okay, so it's not human versus machine. It's more about how we figure out how to make them work together really well.
Exactly.
It makes me think about those documentaries that show how companies build those super complex products, like the ones where you get to see behind the scenes.
Oh, yeah, those are fascinating.
It's like watching a whole symphony of resources in action.
I know. And as technology keeps evolving, I think we can expect even more innovative ways to combine and leverage these resources. It's going to get even more complex.
Absolutely.
Like, think about 3D printing.
That's a game changer.
It is. It allows companies to create custom products on demand, which reduces waste and shortens lead times. Plus, it's blurring the lines between natural resources, capital resources, and even labor in some ways.
Yeah, it's like we're entering a whole new era of resource management.
I think so.
But speaking of new eras, how is globalization impacting the way businesses think about resources?
Well, globalization has created amazing opportunities for businesses to access new markets, new talent, new
That's
resources.
true, but it's not without its challenges, right?
No, definitely not. Companies operating on a global scale have to deal with these super complex supply chains, cultural differences, and those varying regulatory environments. It's a lot to handle.
It sounds like a logistical nightmare.
Sometimes it can be. Are there any companies that you think are doing a particularly good job of managing resources in this globalized world, though?
I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that. Are there any that stand out to you?
Yeah, I think Unilever is doing a lot of things, right? They have a huge global footprint. I mean, they're practically everywhere.
They really are.
And they've made a real commitment to sustainable sourcing, reducing their environmental impact, and promoting diversity and inclusion throughout their whole supply chain. So they're thinking about it from all angles.
So they're not just focused on that global expansion.
Huh.
They're incorporating those ethical and sustainable practices into their overall strategy.
Exactly.
It's impressive. And it makes me think about how important it is for businesses to be willing to adapt and evolve their resource strategies over time. It's not something you can just figure out once and then never think about again.
Right, right. It's constant process. The business landscape is always changing, so companies need to be agile and adaptable in how they approach resource management.
Hmm.
What works today might not work tomorrow.
So it's all about staying ahead of the curve.
Yeah, you got to keep learning and evolving.
But up until this point, we've been talking mostly about those tangible resources, the
Mm.
things you can actually see and touch. But what about those intangible resources that are becoming more and more valuable in today's business world?
You're right, those are incredibly important too. Intangible resources like brand reputation, intellectual property, and company culture can be just as valuable, if not more so, than those tangible assets.
So these are the things you can't necessarily hold in your hand, but they still have a huge impact on a company's
Yep.
success.
Exactly.
Can you give me some examples of how companies are using these intangible resources to kind of get ahead of the competition?
Sure. Think about a company like Disney. Their brand is built on decades of storytelling, those iconic characters, and that whole reputation they have for creating magical experiences.
Yeah, Disney is practically synonymous with magic at this point.
And that intangible brand equity is so valuable. It allows them to charge higher prices, attract top talent, and expand into new markets really easily.
So it's like their brand is their secret weapon.
In a way, it takes a ton of work to build that kind of reputation, though.
I bet. So how does a company even go about building a strong, intangible asset like that? You can't just go and buy it off the shelf, can you?
No, not at all. It takes time and consistency and a deep understanding of who your target audience is.
You've got to know who you're talking to.
Absolutely. Companies like Apple have built these huge, loyal followings by consistently delivering high-quality products.
They're known for that.
Right. They create those memorable customer experiences and cultivate a real sense of community among their users.
I can definitely see that with Apple.
They're not just selling you a product, they're selling a lifestyle, an aspiration.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about intellectual property? How does that fit into the whole intangible resource equation?
Well, intellectual property includes things like patents, trademarks, copyrights, and those things can be a major source of competitive advantage for companies.
Okay, I could see how that would be the case.
Think about pharmaceutical companies, for example. They invest so much money in research and development to create new drugs.
It's a risky business.
It is, and those patents that they get protect those innovations and allow them to earn back their investments and keep innovating.
So in a way, their intellectual property is kind of like a gold mine.
Yeah, it can be. But protecting those intangible assets is tough, especially in today's digital age. It's a whole new challenge.
I bet. How do you protect something like that?
Well, cybersecurity becomes incredibly important for companies that rely heavily on their intellectual property.
Right.
And then you've got the whole world of social media. Companies need to be constantly vigilant about protecting their brand reputation online. It's like a whole new battleground for resource management.
It sounds exhausting.
It can be.
Yeah.
So we've been talking about those tangible resources, those intangible resources, the complexities of operating in a globalized world. And it's making me think about how all of these pieces fit into that bigger picture of ethical and sustainable business practices.
Yeah, you're right. It's all
Yeah.
connected. As companies are becoming more aware of the impact they have on the environment and on society, they're starting to integrate those ethical considerations into their resource management strategies more and more.
Definitely.
So it's not just about what resources you use, but how you use them.
Exactly. It's about the whole process.
Are there any companies that you think are really leading the charge in this area? Any that are doing it really well?
I think Patagonia is a great example. They've been a pioneer in sustainable business practices for decades. They use recycled materials, support fair labor practices, and they're very vocal about advocating for environmental protection. They've shown that it's possible to be both profitable and responsible.
They're definitely setting the standard. It's like they're proof that doing good is actually good for business.
Yeah, I agree.
But I can't imagine it's easy to make those changes. It takes more than just good intentions, doesn't it?
Oh, for sure. It requires a pretty fundamental shift in mindset from a focus on those short-term profits to a long-term vision of sustainability and social responsibility.
So you have to be willing to play the long game.
Exactly. And companies need to be willing to invest in new technologies, make changes to their supply chains, and sometimes even rethink their entire business models. It can be a big undertaking.
It sounds like a total transformation.
Yeah.
So how do companies even begin to make those kinds of changes? It seems so overwhelming.
Well, it all starts with commitment from leadership and a willingness to embrace both innovation and collaboration. Companies can look to what other companies in their industry are doing those best practices, partner with nonprofits and even talk to their customers to figure out more sustainable and ethical solutions. It's really about working together.
So it's a collective effort to create a better future for business and for the planet.
That's what it comes down to.
But aside from those big systemic changes, what can individuals do to contribute to a more ethical and sustainable business world? What can the average person do?
As consumers, we have a lot of power, you know. We
Right.
can choose to support companies that are aligned with our values.
Right, so it's about where you spend your money.
Yeah, and we can also reduce our own consumption and advocate for policies that promote sustainability and social responsibility, so we can use our voices too.
So it's about voting with our wallets and our voices.
Exactly. It's a good reminder that we all have a role to play in creating that more ethical and sustainable future.
That's like a ripple effect.
Yeah.
Speaking of impact, I'm curious to get your thoughts on this whole trend of impact investing. It seems like investors are more and more interested in supporting businesses that are trying to make a positive difference in the world.
It is a growing trend, and it's a good one. Impact investing is all about aligning your financial goals with your values.
So it's like investing with a conscience.
Yeah. Investors are starting to realize that they can actually generate both financial returns and make a positive social or environmental impact at the same time.
It's not just about making money then.
Yeah.
It's about making a difference.
Right.
But how do those impact investors even identify the companies that are truly committed to sustainability and social responsibility? I mean, how can you tell if a company is genuine?
Well, there are a lot of organizations and resources out there now that help investors evaluate the impact of different companies and investment opportunities.
So there are people who specialize in this.
There are. They look at a company's environmental footprint, social impact, their governance practices, and how transparent they are.
So it's about doing your research and making sure that your investments are actually having that positive impact.
Yeah, it's important to be informed.
Well, it's pretty amazing to see how the world of business is evolving to embrace these ideas of sustainability, ethics, and social responsibility. I think that's a really cool thing.
I agree. It's a definite step in the right direction.
It feels like we're at this turning point where businesses are starting to realize that they can be a force for good in the world, and investors are taking notice.
I think so. It's a really exciting time to be having these conversations.
It is. So beyond impact investing, are there other ways that businesses are coming together to tackle these big challenges?
Yeah, definitely. There's a growing trend towards businesses collaborating to try to create more sustainable and ethical practices. We're seeing these industry-wide initiatives to reduce waste, improve working conditions, and promote transparency in supply chains. It's a collaborative effort.
So it's like they're realizing they can get more done by working together than they can by working alone.
Exactly. There's power in numbers.
Are there any examples of these kinds of collaborations that have really impressed you?
The Sustainable Apparel Coalition is a great example. They bring together all these major fashion brands, retailers, and manufacturers to try to reduce the environmental and social impact of the fashion industry. It's a huge undertaking, but they're making progress.
So they're creating a shared vision and then actually working together to make it a reality.
That's the idea.
It's inspiring to see businesses come together like that. It gives me hope.
Me too. But how do those collaborative efforts actually translate into real change, though? Like, are we seeing real progress being made?
We are. We're seeing companies make significant strides in reducing their carbon emissions, adopting renewable energy sources, and implementing circular economy principles. We still have a long way to go, but the momentum is definitely building.
So we're headed in the right direction.
We are.
That's good to hear. It's like we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. But I'm curious, with all these complexities involved in resource management, do you ever feel overwhelmed by just the sheer scale of the challenges we're facing? I mean, it's a lot.
I mean, sometimes it can feel a bit daunting, but I find it helpful to focus on those positive changes that are happening. There's a growing awareness of these issues.
People are paying attention.
They are, and more businesses are stepping up to take responsibility. That gives me a lot of hope for the future.
I love that perspective. It's a good reminder that even small actions can make a big difference. Well, we have covered so much ground in this deep dive.
We've explored those essential business resources, how technology and globalization are changing things, the power of intangible assets, the importance of ethical considerations, and the rise of those collaborative solutions. It's been a really great conversation.
It has been. I've enjoyed it.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
Do you have any final words of wisdom for our listeners as they try to navigate this really complex world of business?
I think the most important thing to remember is that resource management isn't about reaching some specific destination. It's a constant journey. It's about continually learning, adapting, and finding those new innovative ways to create value while minimizing your impact on the planet and on society. It's a balancing act.
So it's about finding that sweet spot between profit, people, and the planet.
Exactly.
And it sounds like we actually have a lot of reasons to be optimistic about the future.
I agree. We do. There are a lot of really exciting things happening.
That's great to hear. So to all of our listeners out there, whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur, someone who's just starting out, or just someone who cares about creating a more sustainable and ethical world, just remember, every choice you make has an impact. Choose wisely, collaborate boldly, and never stop innovating. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a pleasure having you with us.
Yeah, it really does feel like we're at this turning point where companies are realizing that they can actually be a force for good in the world, and investors are starting to catch on too. It's a pretty exciting time.
Yeah, I agree. It's a shift in thinking.
But beyond just impact investing, are there other ways that businesses are working together to try and solve these really big challenges we've been talking about?
Definitely. I mean, there's a growing trend towards businesses collaborating to try and create more sustainable and ethical practices. You're seeing these industry-wide initiatives to reduce waste, improve working conditions, and even promote transparency across those really complex supply chains. It's becoming much more of a team effort. So it's like they're figuring out that they can achieve more by working together than they could if they were all just doing their own thing.
Exactly. There's power in numbers,
Yes,
you know?
for sure.
Yeah.
Are there any examples of these collaborations that have really stood out to you? Any that are like really making a difference?
Well, the Sustainable Apparel Coalition is a good example. It brings together all these major fashion brands, retailers, manufacturers to try and make the fashion industry less harmful to the environment and to the people who work in it. They've developed a whole set of tools and resources to measure and improve sustainability performance across the entire supply chain. It's a really ambitious project.
It is. But it's so cool that they're even trying to tackle something that big.
Right. I mean, the fashion industry has a lot of work to do.
For sure. So they're basically creating a shared vision and then actually working together to make it happen.
That's the goal.
It's pretty inspiring to see businesses come together like that. It makes me feel like we might actually be able to make some real progress on these issues.
Me too.
Yeah.
But how do those collaborative efforts actually translate into real change? I mean, are we seeing any tangible results from all this collaboration?
Oh, yeah, we are. We're actually seeing companies make significant progress when it comes to reducing their carbon emissions.
Yeah.
They're adopting renewable energy sources, and a lot of them are starting to implement circular economy principles. So we still have a long way to go, but things are definitely moving in the right direction.
So we're making progress. It's just going to take time.
Exactly.
That's good to hear. It's like we're finally starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Hopefully.
But, you know, with all the complexities of resource management, do you ever feel overwhelmed by just how big these challenges really are? I mean, it's a lot to think about.
Yeah, sometimes it can feel a little daunting,
Mm-hmm.
but I try to focus on those positive changes that are happening. You know, there's a growing awareness of these issues, and more businesses are stepping up and saying, we need to do better. And that gives me hope for the future.
It's like that saying, think globally, act locally. We can't solve every problem, but we can all do our part.
I like that. It's a good reminder that even small actions can have a big impact. Okay, so we've covered a ton of information in this deep dive.
Yeah.
We talked about those essential business resources, how technology and globalization are changing the game, the power of intangible assets, the importance of ethics, and the rise of collaborative solutions.
It's been a great conversation.
It really has. I've learned a lot. Do you have any final words of wisdom for our listeners as they navigate this complex and constantly changing world of business? What's the one thing you want them to remember?
I think the most important thing to keep in mind is that resource management isn't about reaching a specific destination. It's an ongoing journey. It's about always learning, adapting, and trying to find those new, innovative ways to create value while minimizing your impact on the planet and on society. It's all about balance.
So it's about finding that sweet spot between profit people and the planet.
Exactly.
And it sounds like we have a lot of reasons to be optimistic about the future.
I think so. I do.
I love that. So to all of our listeners out there, whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur or you're just starting out, or maybe you're just someone who cares about creating a more sustainable and ethical world, just remember this. Every choice you make has an impact. So choose wisely, collaborate boldly, and never stop innovating. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into business resource needs. It's been an absolute pleasure having you with us.
Thanks for having me. It's been a great discussion.